All right, we're doing podcast number 29 with Alli FRONZAGLIA, aka the Boulder Hiker Chick. Oh yeah! All right, Alli, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here today because I'm a big fan of what you do on social media with the Boulder Hiker Chick. Your adventures in Boulder. I would call you the queen and king of the of the Boulder
I like that.
mountains or hills and everything. So before we started the show, I was saying that okay. So a little background. You or a random question because I'm pretty random. You just celebrated your birthday,
Yes.
and in Boulder Hiker Chick style.
Mhm.
So I'll let you explain a little bit more about what you did. But basically, there was like 30 plus fellow hiker chick sisters, I guess, your
Mhm.
friends. You did this epic hike. It had a theme,
Yes.
and I'll let you give more detail about that
Sure.
because it's awesome.
Okay, so I don't know. I started this tradition last year.
Oh, cool.
It's
Okay.
a little self-indulgent, but everybody seems to go for it. So
It's awesome.
I'm happy, and I love doing it. So last year we started with the first themed birthday hike.
Okay.
I just said, hey, I want to get a bunch of Boulder Hiker Chicks together. I want to celebrate my birthday. I want to go for a hike, and I love to do weird fun things
Yeah.
on hikes, and make everything like I love to like up level every adventure, like, and up level it again and up level it again. And so we decided last year, or I decided last year, to do a flashback prom dress hike. So last year, and I wasn't sure if that many people would be into it because it's one thing to like sign up for a hike and show up for a hike and actually do the hike. And then it's a whole other thing when that hike requires you to have a costume ready ahead of time.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
because my birthday is in June, the weather, both years now, it's been in the 90s. So
Yeah.
it's not really the most suitable weather for a costumed hike or a themed hike. But people were really into it last year. And so we had about 30 women
Uh-huh.
from the Boulder Hiker Chicks who came dressed up in prom dresses from the decade in which they graduated high school
Mhm.
or, were in high school. So I actually had one of my old prom dresses that my daughter like kind of like rigged up to fit it back on my body. It was not, it couldn't zip, it could only zip her up halfway. So
That's
she had
awesome.
to kind of like, she put some hooks on it and
Yeah.
ribbon and everything. And I had the hydration vest over to cover the back so you couldn't
Oh,
tell that it was all
nice.
crazy.
Okay.
And then a lot of women either wore what they had or they went out to consignment shops and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So that was amazing. We had, 30-ish women in prom dresses hiking Sanitas in 90-degree weather on a Sunday. And we caused quite a stir. We ended up actually running into Timothy Allen Olson
Yeah.
on the summit of Sanitas with his Run Mindful group. And so we ended up
That-
having like an all-out summit party, and it was amazing. So this year I wanted to recreate it, but different theme.
For people who don't know much about Mount Sanitas, it's not an easy place to get up to the top. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah. Well, we opted to do Lion's Lair.
Okay.
But
still.
yeah, the main trail up Sanitas is definitely like a lung buster and a leg
Right.
burner. We decided to go up Sanitas because of the whole dress situation and everything, which, ended up being really funny because it's basically a single track in like a lot of spots there. And so, there'd be 30 of us like hiking past,
Yeah.
a couple that was out there on their
Yeah.
normal Sunday hike and not
Yeah.
realizing what the heck was going on. And then this year I decided I wanted to do it again, but I wanted a different theme.
Yep.
Even though the prom dress thing was so great, we're just gonna have to bring that back again sometime. So this time we did When I Grow Up, and so the idea
Love
was
it. Yep.
dress as what you wanted to be when you grew up, and when you were a kid, what you wanted to be. Your dream, like childhood profession, your childhood dream profession. So that was the idea behind that, and everybody got really creative with it. So it was really funny.
Yes, it's amazing. Like for instance, I saw on the Instagram post that you were dressed as an actress. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Hollywood Oscar-winning
But
actress.
yeah, that good point. But it was not just that you wore a dress and I guess heels, but also you carry your little plastic Oscar. But also the red carpet was like that
Yeah.
is like I love it because like you're taking it to the next level. So you just carry all these things with you in your backpack and.
I mean, I have like I have a couple different drawers in my house that are just devoted to like trail swag
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
trail flair, and like costumes and accessories. And I actually have like an ongoing like stash of tiaras for when it's somebody's birthday and who's joining us for
Oh,
a hike.
nice.
So I'm used to carrying a lot of weird, crazy things in my pack for hikes. I mean, probably the craziest. I don't know if I ever told you this.
The Barbie doll.
Well, no, the Barbie is
Okay.
crazy. I do carry a
Okay.
Barbie doll
Yeah.
sometimes.
Love that.
BHC Barbie. But a couple years ago for my friend Karen's birthday, Karen is the one who takes most of our photos for Boulder Hiker
Yes,
Chicks. Yeah,
of course.
Karen. She had a birthday a couple years ago. We were hiking a chasm lake, and I bought off of Amazon an ice luge mold, and I made an ice luge in a commercial freezer. And then we brought the ice luge and a bottle of vodka, so because that's her favorite thing is to do like really chilled vodka shots.
Oh, nice.
So we did ice luge vodka shots. Just overlooking Chasm Lake
Man, that
up there,
sounds
and it
great.
was like a 15-pound block of ice, and I surprised her with it. I carried it in my backpack all the way up to the spot that we were going to hang out and celebrate, and yeah, she was pretty psyched and impressed and surprised. And I pulled out that block of ice, and then we had a good
15
time.
pounds.
Yeah,
That's.
we haven't
man.
done it since because I lost my access to that commercial freezer. So maybe another time. I'll have to combine it with all the extra red carpet I have.
Oh man, like there was like again like 30 people, and there were so many costumes. Like yours was pretty awesome. Another one that I thought was great was the Shira.
Oh yeah,
Custom.
Emily Wishall
Yeah.
was Shira, and she brought it. Yeah, Princess of Power.
Any other custom that you thought? I mean, you really. I mean, there's so many, but like for instance, personally for me, I grew up watching He-Man and the Thundercats. That's why I mentioned on that comment that I wanted to be a Thundercat.
Yeah,
when I was,
yeah. Sweet.
But yeah, there are so many great. So this is a new tradition that like
we'll do it again next year. I just don't know what we're gonna do yet.
It'll be like basically in that area, Sanitas, Lions Lair.
Well,
I mean, it's so
this
convenient,
year we
right?
actually did it on one of my favorite like kind of semi-secret spots in Boulder, Maze Point. So it's a good hike for like it's a good short-ish hike for costumes, starting at Realization Point. Although a couple of our women actually hiked it up from the bottom, so they basically did a full Flagstaff summit in their costumes.
Wow.
But most of us did Realization Point to Ute Trail, to Boy Scout Trail to Maze Point, which is just kind of a nice little loop around the Flagstaff Summit area. But yeah, we'll keep mixing it up, and I'll keep finding new hikes every year. But I'm always considering what people will be wearing and carrying with them, so that we can kind of strike that balance between, actually making it a real hike, but also making it somewhat conducive to the costumes. I mean, someone did show up in hiking clothes and had their costume in their backpack, and I said, "Oh, what are you?" Like, because you look like a hiker. And she said, "Oh, I brought in my backpack so I can change into it when we get to the overlook." I said, No, we hike in it. That's part of the challenge."
Please tell me that you didn't wear those heels when you
No,
okay,
I did not.
Okay.
I did climb around on the rocks at Maze Point in them, and people were very concerned, as they should have been. But I hiked in my trail shoes.
Now, have you always been an outdoors person? I mean, how did it all start? Like,
I was just telling someone the other day, we were talking about this. I always enjoyed being in nature. But I grew up in a very suburban area where we had smaller pockets of nature, but you couldn't have access to, the type of nature like an open space that we have here, not to mention the extensive trail system, without driving, many, many hours. I grew up in southwestern Connecticut near New York City. So I always loved, going to the riverbank, the river that flew through our town, and, hanging, like being in the woods and stuff like that. But I never really got into hiking until I moved to Colorado for the first time in 2005.
Okay.
I mean, I think I had gone on hikes and I was, sort of a casual hiker. I enjoyed it, but it never really like clicked for me until I came to Boulder and I experienced the hiking out here and the trails out here, and then that kind of sent me off, into this whole area and doing more running and all the other things that I do.
You remember those first months, when you moved here? How was that experience like of discovering all these new places and trails? And because it's quite the experience. I'll share something like I love cycling, right? And one of my first impressions when I moved to Boulder was like the shoulders of the roads are so wide. Like I can see myself cycling everywhere, and I was so excited because like this is great. And then when you go in different places in Boulder, you can see that there's like not only roads but also little dirt trails where you can hike or ride your bikes. And I'm like, this is amazing.
I know.
So that was like one of my first impressions of, oh yeah, we're in the bubble or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's very similar to my experience. I mean, I never thought I'd live in a place like this. And I didn't really know what was out here. I didn't even have very much experience traveling through the West before I moved here. I mean, I literally came to Colorado for the first time to look at houses when we decided we were moving to Boulder. I was just brand new. And, I mean, I was every day just walking out of my house looking at the mountains, like, which stuff I had only seen in like magazines before.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. And so it was like, I mean, it was really eye-opening. I mean, it was a really transforming experience those first couple of years. I also had a young child at home, so I wasn't able to necessarily like, hit the ground running and go explore everything I wanted to explore because we moved here and I had a 2-year-old daughter who is now a teenager. But at the time, I was staying home and caring for her a lot of the time. And so I was, somewhat limited to stuff I could explore with her or in the small amounts of time when I was on my own. But I mean, I just remember like, hitting Mount Sanitas for the first time. Oh, people will be interested in this possibly. The first time it took me 3 times to summit Mount Sanitas.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Well, and I kept getting lost, which is the stupidest thing ever. But I tell this story because I feel like it's important for people to know that like everybody has to start somewhere, and nobody's like comes out of the womb like knowing how to navigate, knowing how like having the stamina to do these hikes, like all this stuff. A lot of it is just experience and getting out there and reading more and talking to people and, keep like hitting that trail. Yeah. And, it's so hilarious. Now people die laughing when I tell them. But I got lost on Mount Sanitas multiple times. It took me, I would like do the trail halfway up the first time, then come back down. And I did it like 3/4 the way up. The next time came back down, finally, figured out where the summit was and managed to hike the whole thing. But I literally started out like that, not really knowing how to follow a trail, not really knowing where to get the information I needed online, for routes and stuff. And, and I was in North Boulder. So Sanitas was kind of my first place that I started exploring. And then Red Rocks, Anemone, Settlers Park area too. And obviously Chautauqua. But like, I mean, I just felt like I'd been dropped in some sort of like dream world with like, just incredible beauty, amazing wildlife. And, to be surrounded too by so many people who felt the same, like who appreciated like the community and their, I think, everyone's like love and stewardship of that space, you really feel it. So it's really amazing. Yeah.
You talk about your first Sanita hikes because, when you first moved to start living in altitude and you go, I mean, Sanitas is not an easy hike, especially if you just go the traditional route. It's a short climb, relatively short climb to the top, but it can be pretty steep. And so
I think it's 1.1 miles and 1,300 feet of elevation.
Yeah, so
or 1280.
It's so worth it. It's beautiful. But I remember one time when my sister-in-law first moved to Colorado, we took her to do, Sanitas. Everybody has to. Yeah, we couldn't make it to the top.
Right.
And because, it takes time, and they didn't want to keep pushing. And
Right.
so
And so many locals just recommend it because
Yeah.
it's a popular common hike. And if you live here and you're in the bubble,
yeah,
it's one of the easier
Yeah.
of the 5
I agree.
peaks.
Yeah, totally. And now you were talking about this other trail, Lions Lair, which is
Yeah.
probably one of my favorite
Yes.
trails like in town. I love the switchbacks and the fact that you go up, but it's more runnable or hikeable or whatever.
Yeah.
It's so pretty. And so when you first moved here, you start hiking. How did that passion, like, how do you keep developing that passion? How do you meet? How do you start building your community?
Right. Well, I kind of took a roundabout way because in the middle, I moved back east for 6 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So I was here for 2 years.
East Coast again?
Yep.
Okay.
To the Boston area.
Yep.
So I was here from 2005 to 2007,
Mhm.
and that's kind of when I got my taste of Boulder and the trails, and that's when my love affair started, basically. But we had come out here for my husband's work, and he had an opportunity back east that we felt he needed to take, and it was a chance to reconnect with family for a little while my daughter was still young, since both of our families are still out there. So we went out to the Boston area for 6 years, and I kind of took my love, what had started growing, I think, inside of me, and what I started to connect with here, I took with me back to Boston. And even though I couldn't do the same exact things with it, it did inspire me to seek out more open space and trails out there. And I became a naturalist with Mass Audubon, which is, not so much based on like the physical activity piece of that, but just the nature connection and working with community. And I was teaching science and nature classes with
nice.
kids out in trails.
Awesome.
And so that was kind of my way of, continuing to build on what I think started in Boulder in the way that I could in the Boston suburbs. And then when we came back, I was, the whole time we were in the Boston area, I enjoyed it, but I was, set on coming back here.
Yeah, of course.
And so finally we made it work. And in 2013, we moved back. And I was, and now I was coming back in a different situation because I had this additional trail experience now, this knowledge of the natural world, and how to facilitate like nature connections and facilitate groups a little bit better. And then my daughter was older and she was in school now. And so I actually had time to like hit the trails more freedom to go places, and the freedom to go places with her too, because she was actually old enough now to hike and, keep up with me and everything. So, I got here and I was like, I'm ready. Like, here I am. I'm back.
I can also imagine that you put things into perspective in the sense that you were right. I mean, like for instance, right now we're living in Fort Collins and it's nice, but we're like, oh, we can't wait to come back to Boulder. So it's like, you were ready to be back and just,
I
start.
had 6 years to think about it.
Of course, right? Because when you get a taste of this town and you're like, oh man,
it's very difficult to leave. I mean, that's why there's so many people. I mean, I think half the people I know have been here and left and come back. It just has that kind of pull, because it's tough to find a community quite like this, that has, I think, like the infrastructure, the services in town, like dining, entertainment, like
totally
culture, everything, and then all of that natural world around you and trails.
It's
so
awesome.
Incredible, and biking. Yeah. So anyways, I came back and I was ready to connect with people, and I was ready to do what I felt like I was meant to do here, which is hike the crap out of these trails and make a bunch of awesome friends who also like to do the same thing.
Right.
And it just so happened that through my daughter's school, I was connected with Carrie Armstrong, who is the Boulder Hiker Chicks co-founder. She was basically with me from the beginning.
Nice. Yeah.
I was always very social media oriented. So, it's always hard for me to tell this story because it's like, it happened so organically and it wasn't necessarily intentional. I mean, I'll try to tell it as succinctly as I can.
Yeah, please, no, go for it.
Basically, Carrie and I started hiking together regularly. And I learned that she was really interested in kind of exploring new trails, and she was very interested in hiking, everything she could in the Boulder system. And I was very focused on the Boulder Trail system. Like I was, kind of infatuated with this incredible network of trails. It's 150 miles of trails. I think it's 45,000 acres of open space just outside our door, you know, and that's just City of Boulder. That doesn't even include Boulder County. So, City of Boulder trails, like I was just fascinated and enamored with this really extensive system of trails and how they all connected to each other, and you know, all the different ways to approach each peak and the summits, and how everything just worked together, and the trails out in the plains and the, you know, the trails in the west and everything. So, so she and I kind of started, you know, every week, like, what trail haven't we hiked yet? And hiking a different trail. And I told her about the Skyline Traverse, because I had read about it and I had not done it yet. I was not even close to being in the shape to do it yet.
I've never done it, and it's a tough one. I mean, why don't you talk? Talk more about that.
So the Skyline Traverse is, I have to mention the Skyline Traverse when we talk about like how the BHC Boulder Hiker Chicks came about, because it really was kind of a keystone for that. But it's a 16.4 mile hike that encompasses, I mean, roughly, you'll see different numbers, but that's what I go by, that encompasses the 5 major peaks in the Boulder Range. So from north, that would be Sanitas, Flagstaff, Green, Bear, and South Boulder Peak. Sanitas is like, I forget, 68, 82, something like that. And then, you know, you're ending at South Boulder Peak, which is 8,549 feet. And you can do it in the other direction, too, obviously. People have their own preferences. That's a whole different thing. But that's it in a nutshell. I mean, I always consider the classic route to actually be north to south, because you end on the highest point, which is the most climactic. It just makes the most sense to me. Like, when I look at the map and everything and I think about it, to me, that's the like cleanest classic route. You know, starting at Goat Trail all the way down one nice long line down to South Mesa. So anyways, I had read about it, and you know, at the time I was not that kind of a hiker. I was not that strong of a hiker, not that experienced. And so the idea of doing that much mileage and that many peaks in one day was sort of like, just like I was blown away by Boulder's beauty when I moved here. I mean, I was blown away by the idea that somebody could do this. And, you know, and I didn't know, I was new to, like, I didn't know how extensive the trail running community was here, the hiking community, all that. You know, I didn't even know that a lot of the reports I was reading were from trail runners who were actually running it.
Got it.
And I do trail run now, but at the time I was just strictly a hiker and occasional road runner. But, anyways, I just was like, I remember thinking and doing the math over and over again, like, how can I do this in a day? Like, how can I get this done in a reasonable amount of time? Like, what is my pacing? What is the route? So I brought it up to Carrie, and she was very interested in this idea. I mean, now that I know Carrie very well, like, I realized, like, of course, she was going to, you know, be super excited about this, because it's, you know, she loves a challenge and she loves doing something new, and she loves logistics, and so I mean, it was right up her alley. So we started talking about it, and so we decided we were going to piece the route together, and then eventually do it. So this was like spring of 2014. We basically started just the two of us training for this hike, but we started inviting other people to join us. And we told them, like, hey, we're training for this Skyline Traverse. I was calling it the 5-Peak Traverse occasionally, which is what we call it now in the Boulder Hiker Chicks. Some people were calling it the Sanitas Sobo, so initially we called it that. So anyways, you know, we were telling people, hey, we're training for this epic hike, and we're putting together all the route. I remember, you know, we would just literally look at the map and, you know, do every transition, because the transitions from mountain to mountain can be difficult if you don't really know the system. So, like, learning how to connect Sanitas to Flagstaff, that's probably the most complicated of all the transitions. Learning that route and making sure we knew it so that we weren't lost or whatever. You know, figuring out how to get from Flagstaff to Green, all that stuff. And then just the basic training of, like, getting our strength up so that we had summited each of those peaks individually and in doubles in different combinations, so that we were, like, strong enough and comfortable enough, like, you know, on the route. And so, we had friends and neighbors join us on some of those training hikes. And then suddenly the day was, you know, we set the date, and I think it was, can't remember if it was May or June that year. I think it might have been June, but June 2014, it was us and I think 5 other women. And again, this wasn't a public thing. It was just, these were women that we knew, like probably, I think almost all through our kids' school. and we went and did it. And we started in Sanitas, and we went all the way to South Mesa, hit all 5 peaks. And,
Nice.
you know, it was incredible. I mean, it took us a while. It was like an all day long
Yeah.
thing because, you know, that at the time, that was our first one. That was the hardest thing we'd ever done. I think at least for me and Carrie, I can't speak to everyone who was with our crew, but it was super challenging.
Yeah.
And I just remember the incredible feeling of accomplishment. Like when we finished and we went to Southern Sun to celebrate, like
Best place in
that,
town.
yeah, I know, totally. But yeah, Southern Sun, Under the Sun always help
Right.
us out. They're our partners for a lot of our big hikes. That's where we go to celebrate afterward. And I just remember, like, I got hooked on that feeling of doing something so insanely epic that, like, you almost didn't know if you could do it. And you just set out and you do it anyways and just see what happens. And then if you're successful, then, you know, and then that celebratory beer and that, like, burger afterward or nachos and, like, and the feeling of, like, sharing it with other people too is so key to that. Like, it wouldn't have been the same if it was just me doing it. Like, I realized, like, part of it is like us sharing this experience together, that now we have this forever. Like, no matter what happens, no matter if we all go our separate ways after this, we all shared this amazing day together. And, like, we were all so collectively proud of ourselves. It was, like, you know, kind of gives me goosebumps. It was such a great day, such a good feeling. And from there, that moment, probably that day, that was really, like, where Boulder Hiker Chicks was born, because at that point I took the initiative to start a Facebook page, start posting when we were going hiking and saying, like, hey, anybody want to join us? We're going for a hike. You know, hey, we just did this great 5-peak traverse. We're going to do it again in a few months if anybody wants to join us. And sure enough, like, a lot of people did see our own personal social media posts and started asking, like, well, what was that hike you did? I want to do that. Like, do you think I could do that? That's how, like, it starts for a lot of people. And that's what I love, is when people are like, wow, I never even thought to do that. Do you think I could do that? And I'm like, yes, I think you could. I mean, you have to put in the training, but I think you could.
I love so much what things that you just said, because that's been on my mind lately, is this idea that like sometimes or many times in your life you need a challenge, and to do something that you don't necessarily think that you're physically ready for, and then you question yourself, right? Like at the beginning, like, am I be able to do it? And then even though it's not a perfect experience, you finish it, and then you feel so accomplished that you're like, okay, I got this. What's next?
Right.
And you were talking about the celebration aspect and doing it with other people. I can agree more. I think that's one of these kinds of experiences make you grow, you know, like as a person, and of course having some, you know, have so much fun, make new friends. Oh, I mean, love that. Super
I
epic.
mean, that's always been, we have a wide variety of women who, you know, now here we are 5 years later, we have a wide range, all different types of women who hike with us. And, you know, some of them are really brand new to hiking, brand new to fitness. And some of them are, you know, hardcore athletes, honestly. And they all, you know, but everybody comes together because they like our emphasis, I guess, on community and friendship and fun and, you know, having a non-competitive environment and all that. But I think, you know, even though we have a range of women hiking with us, like, I've always felt our sweet spot, like the people we're really intentionally trying to reach out to and who I really love to support, are those people who, you know, are for whom, you know, they're challenging themselves and they're getting that sense of accomplishment, and they're kind of the more everyday athlete in Boulder, everyday person in Boulder, who's not, you know, I mean, sure, we'll take all the sponsored athletes who want to come hike with us. That's great. And all the professionals and, you know, our ultra runners and triathletes and everything else. And we have a few of those women, but, you know, I mean, we feel like, being in Boulder is kind of important, and we enjoy being a space for people who are just kind of like out there enjoying themselves and just want, you know, either want to make new friends or want to challenge themselves, and this is, you know, this is like a step up for them, whatever the hike might be, and they're working toward it, toward goals. You know, people who don't necessarily consider themselves like the the baddest, the toughest in
Yep.
Boulder, but they still can be bad and
Yeah,
tough, of
yeah,
course, and they
totally.
are.
Yeah,
You know, just to give people a space. Like I think sometimes it's intimidating in Boulder
totally.
because
Oh yeah,
there's so many incredible athletes. And
yeah.
again, like back to the Sanitas thing, we get lulled into like what's easy, what's hard, and you know, well, this person did that. Well, you did this. Well, this person, you know, oh, you hiked Bear Peak. Well, Bear Peak's such a challenging hike. Well, somebody over here just did like 8 laps of it, whatever. Like, you know, I mean, you're here with like,
Totally.
you know, Corey Richards is training for Everest, like
Oh,
on
wow.
the same
Okay.
on the same trails, or
Yeah.
he was on the same trails that like other, you know, that we're all sharing.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, there a lot I hear from women that hike with us that, you know, they'll say, well, I'm not a very strong hiker. I'm not really an athlete. I'm not really this or that. And the truth is, I say, like, you should own like the things that you're capable of doing, like,
Love that.
and
Yep.
you are capable of a lot, and you are doing a lot. It's just that our perception gets skewed out here so easily in this
Yeah.
bubble, and it's
I
important.
couldn't agree more about that. Like, I totally living in Boulder. Yeah, like a little example, when I was training for triathlons, for the longest time, I was always advised to join masters group and, you know, in a gym
Right.
to swim with people. And I remember before I decided to join that group, I trained by myself for like a month and a half because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not in good shape. And so, but then I got to the group, and yeah, it was not easy the first week or two, but then I was like, yeah, I'm part of the group.
Yeah.
I can swim, you know. So, but I totally get it. It's,
Yeah, I still feel that, like, because I'm new-ish or like semi-new to trail running, and like I've been in my solo time, I incorporate more and more running into my hikes, and a lot of people invite me to group runs and stuff, and I'm like terrified to go, because like I keep thinking like someday
Totally.
soon I'll be ready to go, and I mean I know I could go at any point, and I know these people, and I know I'd have the experience like you're just described, and that people would be welcoming, and that
Yeah.
there's a range of levels, and that, you know, people who are running these groups aren't necessarily they want to cater to a range of people, and you know, if it says all levels, it's all levels, and I would be welcome.
Right,
But
right.
it is intimidating because
Totally.
you know, and so I feel that, like, yeah, for sure, and I think that happens a lot. So we enjoy kind of, and that's, you know, so after the 5-Peak Traverse started taking off and attracting more people, we basically segued into, hey, like, some people want to just do regular hikes too. Like, it's, you know, instead of just training for this 5-Peak, we should do other stuff too. And we started kind of planning a range of hikes. So, you
Yeah.
know, throughout the year now, we organize and host probably about 35 to 40 hikes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And they represent a range of levels. So we'll have several all-level hikes, several moderate, and then a few strenuous. Because we have women there's some who really just want to do the really super strenuous, like epic
Grand
stuff.
Canyon.
Yeah, yeah. And then there are some who prefer to like take it easier, and they're more maybe they're more interested in the social aspect. Maybe
Yeah.
they just want to relax. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, people
Right.
have different reasons, but like some people just want to do the shorter, easier ones, or
Right.
they're just in the moderate zone. You know, so this way it gives everybody, you know, something that they can choose and make their own. And then we have some women who do it all, like
Yeah.
like I do, and they love it all, like I do. So yeah, I mean, we kind of, yeah, we do a lot more than just the 5-Peak Traverse. Yeah, and we have one of our hiker chicks. You mentioned the Grand Canyon. One of our hiker chicks is a Grand Canyon guide
Oh,
for
sweet.
part of the year, and
Okay.
so she, on her own, which we're so grateful for, Kristen Gruka, she started organizing trips just for the Boulder Hiker Chicks. So just for the women, not open to the public, but for women who have previously hiked with us.
Yeah.
Which is quite a few now, close to 500 probably. She organizes, she's been organizing these overnight 4-day backpacking trips through like these really remote, more primitive trails in the Grand Canyon. And it's been really amazing. So I got the chance to go on one in the spring, and it was life-changing.
Right. So yeah, that was like in May.
That was April. Yeah.
April.
Close,
April.
yeah.
Yeah. I saw how you I guess shared all of your experiences doing that trip on Instagram. But something that I always think about when I think of you in building the Boulder Hiker Chicks is one time we met, you know, at the what's this place?
Alfalfa's,
Yeah,
yeah.
Alfalfa's, and we're talking about building the brand. And you said that when you first started doing this hikes, I think I don't know if it was the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your first hikes, you organized it, and it didn't go as well as you thought it would be, because not that many people show
like
up.
No one
one. But it's so awesome and inspiring, because now, 5 years later, like, it's a group that it keeps growing. You're talking about 500 people, 40 trips a year. You have like 100 regulars. You were talking about a post on Instagram the other day, and it's just like, it's not all. It's several things, right? One is like, you have this. What is the word that I'm looking for? Like, not only perseverance, but also you believe in what you're building, and you just keep going and going. But talk about that.
Right.
That first.
I think it goes back to maybe the birthday theme hikes, and like me being like just me. And I think, we started incorporating more of ourselves into our hikes, and like bringing more personality into the hikes.
And I think that's, from a fan, I think that's what makes you, because another word that I would add to what the brand is all about is you guys are badasses. Like, honestly, it's like you do your weird things on the, people don't do. So, and strong, and fun. So that's
well, we feel like, I think we strike a good balance between fun and gritty. Like, we like to get it done. And I like to see people be successful and feel good about their time out in the trails, and feel good about themselves, and give them a space to feel empowered and like do badass stuff. And so, we have like we hike rain or shine policy. Like, we've almost never canceled. Only one time, actually, in 5 years did we cancel a hike due to weather. The rest of the time we'll either hike no matter what, or we'll just change the location or the duration of the hike for safety reasons sometimes. But that's it. We are kind of like, that's one of Carrie and I feel strongly about that. Like, it's sort of like making a commitment to yourself. Like, I carved out this time for myself. I want to do this for myself. And also, I can do it. And like, rain's not going to hurt me, and snow's not going to hurt me. Mud is annoying, but it's not going to hurt me.
Totally.
And all that. And I think, as far as building the brand, I think because Carrie and I were kind of being ourselves unapologetically, and encouraging people to kind of like just let it all out, be yourself, be like weird if you're weird, or be whatever. And if you want to walk on a red carpet during your hike, walk on a red carpet during your hike. And I think like putting yourself out there and like just being yourself encourages other people to do the same. And it kind of sets the tone for, this is a safe space, and this is a space where, you can say something and you're not going to be judged for it. Like, it's okay. And you can, wear what you want to wear and do what you want to do and be who you are. And that's very freeing. So I think, that's kind of, I told the women at the birthday hike this year, I said, I hope everyone realizes it's not really about me and my birthday. Like, I don't really care that much. It's really just about, this is a great excuse for me to get a great group of women together and do something funny and weird and awesome and badass. And like, I just use the birthday as an excuse to do it. But I love it. Like, I'm kind of a weirdo who likes like costumes and fun things. That's and awesome. Trying to up level things and do things in a different way. I try to think what hasn't been done before, and like, that's who I am. So like, I don't hold back, and I bring that out, and I think it encourages other people to do the same. And of course they're going to do it in their own way, but that's perfect. That's awesome.
No, I agree. I haven't seen any like a brand like that on social media, like combining not only the outdoors and pushing yourself, but also having fun, and also other things as well. In all these years that you've been hiking, I'm sure you've done so many hikes. Is there a hike that you can think of that is one of the most rewarding or epic ones that you've done? You always think about, or
Well, is it like cheating if I say the one I did yesterday?
Oh my God! I was just, really, it's funny that you said that, because I was I saw your post.
I've done many, but that is fresh in my mind, and that's certainly up there.
I saw your post, and I was like, I hope she didn't forget about the podcast today, because I was like, that looks so remote. Where you went. Talk about it,
Yeah. So I do. I'm someone who is more of a homebody, and that probably plays into my love of the local trails. Like, so in general, I love having the trails close by and using mostly the trails that are close by to me, because I'm not a fan of driving long distances or planning extensive trips. I mean, it's Colorado as a state has amazing places to go and hike, and I have explored many of them, and I always enjoy it, but I definitely like stick close to home. More often than not, and maybe more than some, because I know that some people, like Carrie, for example, she loves to just go farther out and explore all different areas, always loves to find new things. And I definitely am a little bit more of a creature of habit who sticks more local.
Me too.
But so, one of my favorite hikes, though, that is outside of Boulder, but not too far outside of Boulder, is South Arapahoe Peak, which is a 13er.
Okay.
And it's in Indian Peaks Wilderness. It's just past Netherland. So it's about an hour from town. So for me, that's like a perfect field trip hike. That's what we call them. That's a field trip hike. To me, that's perfect because it's like manageable. Like it's very easy, obviously, to access in a day hike. And it gets me outside of my little bubble here, or a little bit farther outside my little bubble. And, but it's all still quite close, obviously.
Right.
It's still Boulder County. And it's part of the Boulder County watershed there too, actually. So anyways, South Arapahoe Peak is probably, and I have hiked in several other places throughout Colorado, but I think South Arapahoe Peak is my favorite high peak, my favorite peak outside of the city of Boulder. Every year I go and hike it for the last 4 years, and I think maybe I'll have fallen out of love with it this time, and it never has happened, not yet anyways. It's still, no matter, how much I experienced here, it's still one of the best. I just love it. It's rugged, but it just rides that perfect line of like, the trails, relatively easy to follow most of the time, not so much yesterday because of conditions, but relatively easy to follow, relatively accessible, although the trailhead road is pretty rough. But the summit is so dramatic, and the final stretch to the summit is really quite rugged. It's still technically a walk up. I don't know if you wouldn't really call it class 3. It's a class 2 most likely, I would say. But it just feels rugged and remote, even though, it's still relatively accessible and relatively close to town.
Got it.
And, it kind of takes you through so many different zones. One of the things I love about it is that it starts in the woods, beautiful, peaceful, quiet woods, and then starts to open up to, typically, not so much yesterday, a huge hillside and meadow with wildflowers everywhere. And then there's creeks all over the place. And there's a waterfall that you have to it's a waterfall running down a hillside that you have to cross. And then you get to the tree line area, and and it's like that, and it's just amazing. And then incredible views the whole way, and lots of wildlife. And then you get to the glacier overlook. There's a freaking glacier. I mean, come on, the hike has everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking, right?
It has a glacier that you can see from the overlook and from the summit, and it's the only glacier in North America that's owned by a municipality. It's owned by the city of Boulder. Kind of cool fact. And then the summit itself, the summit block, the first time I saw it, I kept saying to the women I was hiking with, like, that's not where we're going. That's not our peak. It must be behind there, or we're going to approach it from a different way. Like, cause it looks very dramatic, and it looks, it's steep, and it is. It looks it looks a little tougher than it is even, and it is tough. And so I almost couldn't believe that was what we were going to hike when we first did it. I was like, there's no way we can get up there. But yeah, it is hikeable, and it is steep, and it is a bit scrambly. But yeah, that summit block is it's just steep and rocky. And then you get up there, and it's just looking at that cirque with North Arapahoe Peak and all the others all the way to Mount Audubon and Brainerd. It's just incredible. It's hands down my favorite. I mean, I loved every hike I've been on, more or less. I don't think I've ever been on a hike I didn't like, but that's my favorite. And so yesterday we went up and did it, and I went with a group of hiker chicks. There were 14 of us, and it was a casually organized group through the members group. So it was all women who've hiked with us before. It wasn't an open to the public hike.
I see. Okay.
Sometimes I do that with hikes like that because it's I feel more comfortable doing a hike like that with people I've hiked with previously.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I just feel I don't want to put anybody in a position where they're unsafe or it's just difficult because sometimes people have a hard time like self-selecting hikes for themselves or gauging their readiness. And if I don't know somebody, I get a little. We don't do a ton with bringing public, like open to the public groups up above tree line. We do some, but we do some, and we give a lot of information ahead so we can make sure everybody knows what they're going to do. But for liability reasons and for everyone's well-being, I tend to take smaller groups and then also groups of women who have already hiked with us for a hike like that, because I just want to make sure everybody's kind of going to be a cohesive team and everybody's going to be ready for it and all that stuff. So anyways, we had 14 of us, and we had planned, I'd picked the date a couple months ago, not knowing what was going to be happening in the high country. I planned it in May. I picked the date. And so true to Boulder Hiker Chicks form, I did not deviate, even though I kept hearing crazy reports of conditions. And 2 weeks ago, people were telling me that I should consider bringing an ice axe and everything. And I thought, we don't do that. We're not we're not doing technical stuff like that with the groups. So I thought, well, shoot, I don't know what to do. I figured, well, let's just see. Let's just wait and see. And, keep the faith. And then thankfully, within a few days of the hike, I started getting reports that it was actually possible. Because before the snowpack had been so high, for a while the road you couldn't access. And then even when the road was accessible,
is that the road to get to the 4th of July trail?
Yes. So it's out of 4th of July trail.
You were talking about how difficult it is to get to that. Well, it's a little rocky. It's not the best.
You need a high clearance vehicle, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've seen an Audi bottomed out there. We had to rescue somebody there last year.
Yeah.
So you definitely need high clearance. My Subaru Outback did fine.
By the way, is that I remember once you posted on Instagram that your car like almost broke down. Like I think
on I-70.
Yeah. So is that still the same car?
No, new car.
Okay, got it. Because it looked like your poor car was done. Okay.
It was done. That was the last time I saw it.
Poor car.
No, it was a 10-year-old Outback, and it was just starting to need more repairs, and it's our only car in our family. So I was like, look, if we're going to keep being a one-car family, we need to make sure that one car actually works consistently. So now I have a fancy new Subaru Outback, and it's
How do you like
fantastic.
it? It's a good car
Love
overall?
It. It's awesome, yeah.
Okay.
Love it. Yeah. I'm a typical Boulder. I drive a Subaru Outback.
No, it's good. I've always...
I'm a dog.
I mean, I've always been curious about that car because it seems very reliable, and I like that. I was gonna ask. So
we went anyways yesterday, and conditions were crazy, but
hailed,
we made it.
Right? Rain or
we had everything basically. The conditions on the trail were close to what was reported to me, a little bit worse than what I thought based on a couple reports. But again, like it's Boulder and everything's relative, and I'm aware that when someone's giving me a trip report, that what they think is totally passable and no big deal might feel different to me or somebody else.
Right.
So, the reports were close enough to accurate. I mean, I changed my outlook to let's just try to get to I've actually, knock on whatever. I've never, not because I'm I don't know, too stubborn, but I've never had to turn away from a summit. I don't think that I can recall. I've never had to abort like a hike with a goal in mind. For any reason. I certainly would, because I, value my life. But but I've just been lucky, and I think in times when it's been tough and I've still been safe enough, I've just pushed through. So I've never had to actually stop and turn away from a summit when I was on my way up that I can recall. If anybody, if I'm missing something, feel free to message me. I'm not I'm not lying. I just can't remember. So, anyways, so I was a little bit uneasy about the idea of going and not summiting, knowing that we might not make the summit, but we were still going to make the drive and still going to put in a lot of the effort and all that, because I know that inside that doesn't sit well with me because I'm so goal oriented and so focused. But I realized I had to make a decision. And if we were going to keep the hike on that day, knowing that conditions are questionable, I had to accept, especially for other people's safety too, that we may not make the summit. And I had to be okay with that, right off the bat. So I kind of made myself okay with that and sat with that thought for a while and just said, my goal will be just to get to the overlook. And then if we get to the overlook and it looks good, then we'll figure out the summit. Cause then you're, I think from there, like 3/4 of a mile, half a mile to the summit. And that's where like the scrambly steep part starts.
I see.
But you could easily just turn around from that point as well and call it a hike and, go down. So anyways, so I was kind of waiting to see. I didn't know how it was going to go. So, we got there and, the first part of the trail was totally dry and clear of snow, and the water was running high, but it was passable. We were doing the creek crossings and it was working out. We had wet feet almost right away, but we were like, whatever, it's fine. But then as we progressed, the conditions started to change. And so we had some very high river crossings, creek crossings, and also parts of the trail that were just underwater, and then huge snowfields that were, in some cases, the trail was right underneath them, and in some cases, we just couldn't. We were having a hard time staying on the trail. We were using an app or two, and we could see that we were either on it or just off of it, but close enough. But, because of the water and the snow, it was really difficult to follow where the heck the trail was. So we were kind of going in the right direction, but we were sort of choosing our own adventure to a little bit of a degree. So it was challenging, and I was so impressed and happy with how everybody just kind of embraced the challenge collectively, because that can go in different directions. Right. You can have one person who's really not feeling it, and that can kind of, which is okay, affect
the mood of the.
It can affect everybody, and that happens. Or the group collectively might, there might be a lot of people in the group who aren't feeling it, or aren't into it. I did the best I could to set expectations ahead of time, so everybody knew it was going to be rough conditions. Everybody knew that we may not summit. Everybody knew that it was going to be wet. Everybody knew all of these things. Yep. And thankfully, everyone who came on the hike, had taken that to heart and was aware, and they were ready for the challenge. So it was impressive that everything we kept getting hit with, we just laughed our way through it and kept pushing through and supporting each other. And we got to the overlook. And at the time, the weather was still good. And the summit block was actually totally dry. That was the driest part of the whole hike. And so we decided to go for it. So we did. And everybody got up on that block, and we summited, and we were so happy. We saw clouds around us, and all morning I was watching clouds, and I kind of knew that there was something coming for sure, and the forecast had said that. So we didn't spend very much time on the summit, maybe only 15 minutes at most. We started heading down, and just shortly after we started heading down, suddenly the rain started. And then, we're laughing about the rain. Everyone's putting their raincoats on. Then it's hail. Then people start kind of freaking out a little bit. We were kind
Was it heavy?
It was heavy.
Okay.
It wasn't big hail, but it was hard. And it was pelting, it was painful. Right. And so, the group, then the dynamics change a little bit, because people start to become concerned about themselves. We're still working together, but people react differently to that kind of situation where you're suddenly uncomfortable. And then there's thunder and lightning. And that affects people also, because everyone becomes very worried. And some people were very scared. I wouldn't say very scared, but everyone was concerned, as you should, because lightning is a serious threat. Yeah. And we were still a little bit above tree line when it started. So, at that point, then everybody's picking up the pace, and the group was kind of stretching out. But we were all kind of keeping an eye on each other, too. And we finally got below tree line, and we regrouped there, and then continued the way down. But then had to deal with, the snow in the morning that had been hard and crusty was now slushy and, messy. And then, so we're dealing with the slushy snow, still trying to find the trail, because it was just as hard on the way down, if not harder, as it was on the way up. And I had hoped it would be easier, but I was wrong. And so we're, route finding, still getting lost over and over again. The hail kept coming. The lightning and the thunder would stop. And then one time somebody saw a bolt behind me, and we were just we gotta go.
Okay, wow.
So it was just really it was everything. Between, and then so the way down, between the trail conditions, and then it was snowing for a little bit, then the hail, the rain, and it just kept alternating between those things. Yeah. The wind would pick up, and the temperature would drop 20 degrees, and then it would stop for a minute, and then it would warm up again. We'd all be hot and take off our rain jackets, and then the hail would start again, and it would be painful, and we'd be oh my gosh.
That was epic.
It was epic. So it was awesome to have, and this was kind of what I hoped would happen. a successful hike where everybody was safe, where everybody felt successful. We reached our objective, and we had an insane, like, sick adventure.
Yeah, because you still feel
on my favorite peak.
You feel challenged,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and again, these are memories that will stay with you for a long time, if not forever.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was great. And for most of those women, for many of those women, it was their first 13er.
Yeah.
And so everyone was feeling super accomplished, and
Right.
it was great.
What's next or when, like,
yeah, I know.
For sure.
Well,
yeah.
I love seeing that in people's eyes, because I've experienced it and you've experienced it. And, like, when somebody's got that feeling, when they're like, wow, I didn't think I could do that, or I wasn't sure if I could do that, and I did. So what else can I do?
Right.
Like, pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, I love that. So for people who would like to start, hiking and don't really have much idea of how to start, or, any advice that you could give them, like hiking 101?
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So, I mean, I think it's great to take a nice, somewhat, like, you don't have to be boxed in, but a somewhat methodical approach to, like, starting any sport or activity, right? And hiking is no different. I mean, hiking can be super duper casual, where you're just going to a trail, and the great thing about hiking is, if you can walk, you can hike, right? You can adjust your pacing, you can adjust, you can take however many breaks you want, you can, bring whatever food you desire, like all these things you can do to customize the hike to suit you so that you can do it. But I think for someone who really wants to get into hiking and wants to kind of challenge themselves continually, and maybe reach some goals, whether it might be like a 13er or 14er or a Skyline Traverse or whatever. I mean, I really like making a commitment to yourself to, like, get out there on the trails a couple of times a week. And I think consistency is important, just like with anything. I have found, and I see, and I think it's obvious that, unfortunately, like, people who are only hitting the trails infrequently are going to, I think, struggle to, like, build that consistent, like, fitness level. And, and being in Boulder makes it obviously very easy. If you're farther out from the trails, that's a challenge. For me, living in Boulder, it's easy and convenient to hit the trails, so I can do that. I know everybody has, different challenges, but hitting the trails consistently is important, because if you're only going once or twice a month, and if you're trying to do harder stuff, it's almost like if you were a runner, but you only did a long run once a month. You know what I mean? You need to have consistency. So I say getting out there as frequently as you can, and then, reading up on the trails and starting with the easier ones and the shorter ones, and going, and building from there. A lot of people do not use this resource, and I don't know why, but if you're starting in Boulder, for example, I think osmp.org is the open space website, and that's where they have it's like the home base for all information on Boulder trails, City of Boulder trails. So, people Google stuff these days. Like, everybody just wants to blindly Google, and you'll get, like, blog posts, and you'll get, stuff. And, sometimes, like, All Trails, Pro Trails, all those sites, Hiking Project, are usually accurate, usually good information, not always. And and you want to go to the source. So, like, if you're going to research trails to hike, I say first go to the source. Who is managing those trails in that open space? And that should be your first stop for information. Then you can compare to, like, the secondary sources.
Got it.
Like these trail apps and websites and somebody's blog post or whatever. It's good to kind of have, like, a combination of those resources describing a trail, because then you're going to have the most comprehensive information probably. A lot of people get incorrect information about Boulder's trails because they don't go to osmp.org.
It happened to me before.
It's natural. You just Google, you're not thinking about it. Maybe if OSMP doesn't come up right away, you just don't click on